Welcome to the Top Floor Podcast. I am your host, Aaron Canthal, and today we have Mr. Lucas Nelson, the Group President of Bud and Mary's. Welcome, Lucas.
Thank you for having me, Darren.
All right, I'm excited for this one. So, as we talked about prior, I don't read bios, so take a moment and introduce yourself.
Yeah, you bet. So, like you said, I'm the group president for Bud and Mary's. In that role, I'm overseeing all of our business. We operate in the cannabis industry in 4 states, Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, and Missouri. We're vertically integrated in a few of those states, and we've also grown to about 150 people. What's really cool about us is that we're a spin out of my family's business that my grandparents founded back in the 60s. They founded that business on a tiny plot of land that my great grandfather gave my grandfather. And over the course of time, they've grown it to be a multinational company that has touch points in about 200 countries around the world. And outside of that business, spun Bud and Mary's. One of the coolest parts about all of this is that Bud and Mary are my actual grandfather and grandmother. So it's been a really neat way to get to honor their legacy. I'm third generation of the family. We've got a very long 7 generation plan. So we fully intend to operate in this space for a long, long time. Outside of that, I've got my law degree from Indiana University. I've got a wife and a 2.5-year-old that fills up just about every other extra second I get. But yeah, it's really been a fun part being a part of a family business and trying to chart a course a little differently than the rest of our competition does in the cannabis space.
Man, that was a lot of rich stuff. So I got to ask, what was great grandfather's plot of land to grandpa? Grandpa starts a business that is producing something to 200 countries. What's that business?
So, it started very early on with flavorings for animal feed. Obviously, Iowa, which is where we're headquartered, big ag state. And one of the funny stories he had from some of his first products is that he'd drive around to farms in central Iowa. He'd walk up to a farmer, like literally step onto his property, walk up to the farmer and say, "Hey, I developed this feed flavoring. What do you treat your feed with?" And most of them would say nothing, right? And so he'd say, "All right, great. Let's put your feed down in front of a cow or, a pig or whatever it was. And then we're going to put this feed down with my flavoring on it. And if my flavoring leads the animal to eat more, then you're going to buy from me." And sure enough, it worked. And a lot of people did buy from him. And as they grew the business over the course of time, they're now in animal feed, human food, human health, pet food, even textiles. And at bottom, company is a scientific company that extracts molecules from mostly botanicals, turns those into products. And, in the cannabis space, you set all the stigma aside, that's all we're doing as well. We're extracting molecules from a plant, turning it into something else. And so it was a very natural transition. But, it is helpful that we have more than 60 years worth of expertise at our disposal anytime we run into any sort of issues.
Man, how cool. All right,
Yeah.
give me a window in what that conversation is like with grandma and grandpa about, hey, we want to use your name and we want to tie it to a cannabis company.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably a little bit of shock, to be fair, at the beginning when we first pitched this to them. But the way they founded the family business and what they have lived as an ethos for a long, long time was, how can we create something that helps people improve their lives? And so the vision for the family business was all centered around, how can we improve half of the world's population every day? We actually track that goal and hit that goal back in 17. So literally by the calculation we used, half of the world was impacted by a product or service that the family business offered. And so they've since upped that, trying to hit about 80% of the world now. We'll see if we can do that by 2040. But the point of sharing that is that they were always driven by how can we improve the lives around us, and whether that was their customers or their employees, they were always thinking about that. And so when I went to them and had this discussion, it was really centered around, you have this legacy that you've created and that you've lived out for decades through this company. We want to bring that same mindset, that same mantra and ethos to our company, and make sure that what we're doing is still always being driven by how can we best serve our employees, how can we best serve customers, how can we best serve all the people that we interact with. And it may sound cliche and that sort of thing, and yeah, every corporation wants to do that, but we really try to live that out on a daily basis. And I'm sure we'll get into some of those ways, but I think it has led us to be successful in ways that maybe others aren't, because they don't have some of that same focus.
Yeah. All right. Well, you just queued up the next question. What are some of those ways? How do you live it out?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the first parts is the aspect of our business that is or could be truly transformational, is really focused around the research we do. So, cannabis as an industry right now, it's got lots of challenges. If we're talking about how can we research these molecules, how can we do clinical trials, how can we get some of that scientific data built up that we all know is key to continuing to improve the standing of cannabis in this country. And we've put our money where our mouth is on that front. We've got a research license from the state of Colorado, and with that research license, we have worked with the regulator in Colorado. We've worked at Colorado State University. And our focus there has really been on trying to understand some of the testing laboratories and some of the products that are out there on the shelf. Are they living up to what they need to as far as the contents of those, right? So can a consumer trust what's on that label? And we found sometimes they absolutely can, and sometimes, hey, we need to do a better job as an industry around making sure we're communicating that information. Perhaps more transformational, though, we have a DEA Schedule One research license, and what all of that means is that we're actually able to study cannabis from other cultivation operations that have a DEA Schedule One license. It's actually allowed to cross state lines because of that license, which of course is highly illegal otherwise at this point in time. Our focus there, though, that's on neurodegenerative diseases, so Alzheimer's, other dementia type diseases. We believe, or at least our hypothesis is, that cannabis can positively impact the progression of those diseases. Maybe not halt it or reverse it, but certainly slow or potentially stop the progression. And we've got a ways to go on that front, of course. We've got trials that we're looking to get off the ground at 25. But I share that because it's really important to us that we're not just focused on, hey, we need to sell this product to this person, try to turn a buck, right? Keep the business moving that way. We're putting real time and effort and resources towards trying to advance the industry as a whole. My grandparents have started, Bud and Mary have started suffering from Alzheimer's, so it's very, very personal. It's something that I want to make sure we're able to leave a lasting impact on. That's one of the ways on the business side of things. But I'm really proud too of the fact that we are about a 6-year-old company, and we have several 6 and 7-year tenured employees. So people that started with us before there was even actually a Bud and Mary's to speak of. We do a lot of different things for our employees, simple things that aren't as simple in the cannabis industry as you wish they were, but things like making sure we have good paid time off, that we have family leave for mothers and fathers if they're going to have a child, making sure that we have a full range of health and dental and vision and all those types of benefits and 401k matches and that sort of thing, trying to bring a little bit of normalcy to this industry. But we reward our scientists for those scientists that develop patented material. They get to share in a portion of the profits from those sales. And we've got a couple of longevity programs that we run for our employees, and we're taking a lot of this from the family business that I'm very proud to be a part of in a lot of ways, for nothing other than the fact that we have I mean, truly dozens of 20-year tenured employees. Like they have spent their entire life around our family's business, and their spouses and kids and, all sorts of other family members, friends, whatever it might be, have been impacted by that relationship too. So it's something I'm very proud of. It's something that we're trying to chart a slightly different course from. And again, it all goes back to a lot of that inspiration I take from my grandparents and what they built.
Well, I just want to point out, you had told me your grandparents are 98 years old.
98 in February. They'll turn 98, both of them.
Both of them in February.
Yep. They've got
Wow.
a birthday, wedding anniversary, and another birthday, all within about 2.5 weeks of each other. So I don't
Wow.
know if they got a deal on something or what, but they jammed it all into 1 month there. In fact, their wedding anniversary is on Valentine's Day. So
Oh,
pretty
cool.
special.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Um, Coming back to the research arm, and sorry, I might have missed it. I think you said neurodegenerative.
Yep.
Are there other diseases or ailments that you all will be researching?
I think in the future there probably would be, especially if we learn something along the way here. That was pretty personal for us, as I shared, and so that's why we wanted to start on that brain health path. The family business on the nutraceutical side of the business has a brain health product as well. So we've had some experience over the course of time with understanding how the brain works, understanding how diseases develop, and then what might be a solution for those. Again, it's not like it's perfect. It's not like we have the actual answer quite yet, but it impacts so many people. And as you know, there is no cure, and there's hardly good solutions out there for even slowing that progression once it starts. So, it's not very often that you end up with a brand new set of molecules like we have from cannabis that come into the public space and at least have the ability to look at. So we're really excited about a couple of the molecules in there, THC, CBD being the ones people know the most. And I think there's some good evidence thus far that they might have some impacts, but who knows what else we might be able to find from that plant and what else it might be able to do for a whole range of different diseases. One of the cool things that we know about CBD especially, but also the molecules working together, is just how much they can reduce inflammation. And so many diseases and other ailments are caused by inflammation in whole or in part. So I think there's a whole nother future out there for some of these molecules far beyond what we understand today. And hopefully we'll be a part of it.
Yeah, cool. You know, I find myself super interested in you and your company. One, because I'm a white kid from a middle class family, right? And smoking weed was so cool when we were growing up. And then it became legalized, and everyone wanted to come to Colorado and all the things. And you got your bud tender, which I think is a funny name for the person that's serving you.
Indeed.
So the forward, at least in my opinion, the forward looking or the forward image of the cannabis industry is exactly what we see, or I see when I go to the dispensary. What I find real interesting about you and your story and your company is there's so much more behind the scenes, right? So you have a thriving business that is built upon grandma and grandpa's, age old business serving
Yeah.
200 countries. You have employees that have, I am guessing, transitioned or at least bridged the gap between nutraceuticals, I think you said, and the cannabis side.
Yep.
You are doing research for the industry. And I know you've done some, and I'm going to say lobbying, that may not be the right term, right? But you and I talked a little bit this about behind the scenes, but I just want to cue this up. And if I'm wrong, you'll correct me. And I'd love to hear the story of being in some of the initial first important discussions of politicians, especially in Iowa, interested in the industry. You were part of that arm, or at least that front. I'd love to hear a little
Yeah.
bit about it.
Yeah, it was some wild times back when we kind of got into this in Iowa. And we had this kind of strange position we were taking where the family business, and especially in Des Moines and in central Iowa, well established, well known. Wait, those guys are going to get into this illegal substance that I've heard my whole life has these issues and is a gateway drug and is going to cause people to have all sorts of terrible things happen to them. And, I mean, this was back in 2017. So we're talking about 3 years or so into adult use in Colorado and Washington. So still very much kind of unknown which way the industry was going to go. The amount of discussions we had about just trying to move the ball a yard, to use a football reference, right? Let's at least open your mind up to, could I hear, could I understand, could I try to picture this plant, these molecules in any other light? Massive challenge, especially for people who had just, the way the legislature demographically is made up, right? It's some people that have had a long history with being told and believing that cannabis is only bad and doesn't really have other benefits. Some of the things that we found that worked the best probably start and end with sharing some of these patient stories. We had a young lady who dealt with and just immense amount of seizures, entirely crippling, really couldn't do anything at all. And she was in her, I believe, early 20s, maybe mid 20s. I mean, had no real quality of life, right? And her parents had started by going to Colorado and taking material back, right? So they're crossing state lines. They're committing a crime in the eyes of the government and law enforcement. And yet they were willing to do this because it was the only thing that gave their daughter relief. And what we really tried to tie in was, look, we can give you the science behind how this is going to work, and we can talk about the risk factors and things like that, and who shouldn't consume cannabis because it could become a problem for them, or it could exacerbate other underlying conditions they might have, right? But at base, if you were the one going through this type of issue, or a family member was going through some sort of immense pain, right? You think about cancer patients or some of the people we continue to serve, people with PTSD, that have had just really traumatic experiences throughout their lives. If that was you, or if that was a loved one, you would want them to have every option available. And as much as anything else, it's those types of personal touches, those types of real life examples that seem to start to move the needle. And I think for a lot of people, I mean, I recount a story from one of our lawmakers that came into one of our retail stores in Iowa and looked around and was like, oh, this is just everyday people in here. It's like, yeah, that's exactly it. Like, there is no, weird, nefarious, these people are all off, in la la land and not contributing members of society. I mean, really quite the opposite. A lot of these people wanted to get back to a routine way of life where they could work or care for grandkids or participate in their families or communities or whatever, and they couldn't because they had XYZ condition that was impacting them. Now, that all makes it sound like it was easy. It certainly wasn't. It took multiple years to get the bill passed in Iowa in the first place. It took another 3 years to get some improvements made from the way Iowa started out. It was extremely limited. But nonetheless, those personal stories were the thing that probably pushed it over the edge as much as anything else. It helped that we were a trusted, known entity, but at the end of the day, it was seeing that real people are being impacted positively by this.
Yeah. All right, here's the other thing I'm curious to ask you about is the early days of the industry becoming legal. And I've heard stories. I'm based in Colorado, as I think you know, and I'll share what I think I know, and you'll correct
Sure.
me and give me some of the inside scoop. Is I've heard because banks wouldn't accept money from cannabis companies, there were literally like armed guards that were transporting, or there's a different word, chaperoning, so to speak, from here to whatever bank would take me. So like there was really this trailblazer aspect to the whole
Oh,
gig.
yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, that's 100% accurate. I mean, I can think back. It's a little more professionalized now, I guess I'd say, but some of what you talked about is still the truth. And several of our operations will have an armored car service with guard with a weapon, pick up cash and transport it to a bank. Sometimes that cash never even actually touches any of our physical facilities. And, we're dealing with crazy stuff like it'll take a week for some of that money to clear, right? You think about a normal business or even just personal life, stick your money in the bank. Usually by the next day, you're good to go. And that's not how we get to operate. But yeah, I mean, in some of those early days, it was literally bags full of cash. It was, you know, build a facility that your centerpiece of that facility might be a safe, which is surrounded by a heavily concreted room, or maybe has some steel bars in there, right? I mean, just some crazy stuff. It was like Fort Knox in some of these places. And that's to say nothing of all of the, cameras and other security that we have. And in fact, a lot of the early crime, and still is some of it today, you would assume, oh, I'm going to go get those plants, or I'm going to go, take some product or whatever. Nah, we're after the cash, and knowing that all these businesses didn't have a great place to put it. We were definitely risk. I mean, we were a target for a lot of those folks, unfortunately. And there's still some funny stories. We never necessarily ended up needing to do this because we were able to get some banking relations finally established. But I mean, there's groups that talk about they were paying their taxes in cash, right? So I mean, in the IRS local offices, getting these duffel bags full of money, as crazy as it sounds, like something out of a movie. Like, what do we do with these? We don't have any ability to handle cash here, right? And yet we were, as an industry trying to pay our bills timely, or as close to timely as you can get. And it's like, well, this is what we have, and we can't put it in the bank, so this is how we're going to pay you. Just some wild times. And even just finding services to help us. I mean, finding things like insurance or different vendors to work with. I can remember being rejected several times throughout the first couple years of our business, and it's gotten a lot better now. But there were literally people who would say, "Nope, I'm not gonna get accused of money laundering, so I'm not taking your cash, even if it's for a good or service that I'd sell to any other business." So I think it took a level of perseverance now still, but especially at that time, to just, all right, I'm not going to take no for an answer. So let's go to the next person and let's see how we can negotiate, figure out some path. But yeah, I mean, this job has led me to hold the most amount of cash I've ever held in one time. So I can definitely say that was something I wasn't expecting getting into this industry.
I am I am highly impressed with you, with the company, with people who operate in a trailblazing capacity, right? Those that are willing to challenge the status quo, uh, fight, if you will, for what they believe in, right? The industry does have legalization, and yet there's still a lot of stuff that's, I don't know, what's the word? It's not rudimentary. It's almost like it's archaic. Like
Yeah,
you can't put money into a bank. Like you gotta be kidding me, right?
right.
But how interesting that in our day and age, as advanced as we believe we are, right, we're still doing some things to an industry that's brand new. So trailblazers and the people that serve them still have whatever stigmas, legalities, etc. I don't know if I explained that well, but I'm really impressed with you and your company for being the trailblazers.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, I think the perseverance is the word that resonates the most, right? Because the amount of times you get told no, or told sorry, that isn't going to work, or hey, yeah, we'll do it and we're going to charge you triple what we would charge any other business, right? Those types of things happen on a routine basis. I mean, even still now, we bump into this a good amount of times. And if you want to, give up, you want to just say, okay, well, I guess not going to be able to do that. You're not going to survive here. I mean, it is a truly one of those where you just can't take no for an answer. You've got to find a different path. You've got to get creative, and we've built a really good team around us to do so. I mean, again, something we took from the family business is never, assume you're the smartest guy in the room, or that, or if you are, then you probably got a problem and you need to find a new room here, right? So always tapping into all the connections we have, the people we've met. It's another good reminder in this industry that you can't really go burn bridges, because it is a relatively small industry. And once you get someone to say yes to you, you don't want them to pull the rug out because it's not like there's dozens of other options out there, you know? So you've got to treat people with respect and try to be beneficial, have beneficially, mutually beneficial relationships and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, if you get tired by being told no or running into roadblocks, not the industry for you, probably. But
Yeah, I
it
love
is
it.
kind of fun because we get to make it up as we go in some ways too, right? We're all of us in this space are charting a brand new course for something that, here we to tie it back to family business in some ways, we talk often about our long-term vision, and I want my 2.5-year-old to have a chance to work in this industry when she becomes of age, and yet you go backwards that amount of years. I never would have told you that there was any path for me to work in cannabis. It's like unless I was gonna, be some sort of illegal trafficker or something. And just what a road we've all come down in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious, do you use your legal degree or your legal knowledge much in your running of the business?
Yeah, we in each of these states, it's obviously heavily regulated still, and they're all set up different. I mean, in some ways, we actually say it's not like we have four states that we operate in. It's almost like we have four different countries we operate in, because that's how different some of the requirements can be. So, it's pretty helpful for that, doing our best to interpret what a rule says, or what a law says. We get into these spaces where you look at some of the, big rules or laws that govern the rest of the business world, right? And they've got history from litigation or from different things that have happened over the course of time. We don't really have that here. So uh, we might all be making it up as we go, but our regulators are too, right? So having at least civil debates about, hey, this is how I'm reading this set of rules, and here's how you're reading it, and what are we going to do about it now? Those happen a frequent amount at this point in time. So it's useful from that standpoint. This is definitely more fun than practice of law was, but it's a very, very good baseline for, at least being able to interpret and read some of those things we bump into on a daily basis.
Yeah. All right, let's shift gears just a little bit, and I'll cue us up here, and I'm curious your thoughts on the family-owned business aspect. For what it's worth, my partner Rachel and I are now partnered in business about 6 months. It's been at times rocky, mostly because of me. Um, and I do some work with some family-owned businesses, and it just adds an element, right? It adds just a little element of something different.
Yeah.
So I guess without being so open-ended, my first question to you is, how have you and your family established your roles and responsibilities within the business, know your lanes, and then how you operate as a family, but in the business?
Yeah, it definitely has its pros and cons. One of the things we hold very, very important, we've actually have a written document, so everyone in the family knows what the expectations are. But there's no requirement to work in the family business. It's not like it's something that is pushed down anyone's throat. We actually have a requirement that basically when you get of age, you have to have worked for at least 2 years elsewhere outside of the family business, and you can't work inside of it until you've hit that mark. Probably obvious, but right, we want people to have some other experiences. You go through a full interview process when you want to work inside family business. We don't just hand those things over. You literally have to earn it. And there has to be an actual opening that's available. It's not like, hey, we're just going to go create something for someone because they want to. So you got to have all of those things. The some of the best parts about it are that there's just like a layer of trust and knowledge that some of it is because of all the years that we have under our belts at this point in time. And some of it is because I know deep down, like when I look at my uncle, who is my supervisor, I know over the course of his life, he's 70, or yeah, will be 71 in January. I know what he's about. I know how he operates. I've seen what he's done. I've seen what matters to him. And there's none of that sort of, I don't know, I don't want to say fake stuff that you have to do sometimes with people you might report to or or whatnot, but there's just an ability to cut right to the issue and know that if he's sharp with me or if I'm very direct with him, it's because at the end of the day, we have committed our lives to making sure that this thing goes in the right direction. And it's not like I ever sit around and wonder like, does he like me or, is he doing this because I said something wrong or I like some other, sports team or whatever. Like there's just that implicit knowledge that we can just start from, hey, this is the issue, we got to solve it. Here's an opportunity in front of us. This is what I see. What do you think? Let's go. Um, that being said, we do holidays this time of year together. It sometimes is never turned off, right? Like you don't have the escape that you get. And I definitely think I feel, and I'm sure my other family members feel too, there's an added layer of pressure, right? Because you want to live up to what your other family members have done, and you want to make sure that you're representing the family in a good way. I mean, when I walk around Des Moines or Denver or our other operations, I feel strongly that it's not just me or Bud and Mary's, it's a whole family and a whole family business that I'm representing. So it comes with that type of pressure built in, and that can get old after a while, for sure. But I think again, being part of a mission focused business and knowing that at the end of the day, I've got a lot of people around me who want what's best and are going to probably make sure that they spend maybe a little extra time with me or our other family members because they know that long term that's going to be beneficial instead of just let's snip snip and move on to the next person. So I mean, overall, I've worked both sides. I would say I do like family business a little bit more, but uh, it has its moments where my wife catches the brunt of, man, I just gotta, I gotta unload here about how wild some of the people in my family are.
Have you have you ever experienced, since you've been in the family business, a family member not pulling the weight or meeting expectations?
We've had it happen before. I was interning when it happened, so I wasn't as quite in the know. And eventually we came to or they came to, but formal agreement to part. And I'm sure it was awkward in the moment. I was in college, so I was probably a little, my mind was elsewhere. But I'm sure it was strange at that point in time. At this point, years removed from that, it feels like things have been smoothed over. And, at the end of the day, it probably wasn't a fit for the business or for the family member. And that stuff happens. It's no mark against anyone or anything like that. But again, that directness that can be positive or negative, I mean, I'm sure it allowed the family to cut to the chase and say, this ain't working. We got to move on, and we'll make sure you're taken care of like any other employee that we move on from. But by the same token, like this has run its course. Um, but at this point, we're well into our third generation, and fourth generation is at least walking or crawling around, and we've had no major, spat or anything like that, and we don't have anyone who's kind of on the outskirts or anything like that. But some of it is probably due to the fact that we've had these maybe what seems like more strict or I mean, it's like almost odd sometimes to say we've got these documents governing how our family business operates and partially how the family operates. But, when that type of stuff comes up, it gives us an easy place to point to and say, this is a process we're going to walk through. And again, it probably results in some hard feelings at times, but hopefully those that won't linger forever and, eventually allow people to move on and still participate and be loved as a family member and, all those sorts of things. But look, the business isn't for everyone, and that's okay too.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. There's something about an owner's mindset that maybe one doesn't really know what that means unless they are an owner. Maybe I'm full of it, I don't know, but there's something about an owner's mindset, which is like we're not punching clocks,
Mhm.
right? Like sure we set boundaries, but maybe they're a little loose, but there's just something about like ownership
Yeah,
that's different than employment ship.
100%. One of the things that constantly comes to mind when I think about that type of comment is for whatever reason, as an owner, I think the best way to describe it is that I feel responsible for our employees, right? And like I said, we've got about 150 of them. But I also feel responsible for their spouses and significant others and their kids. And I've taken that kind of from watching my family develop over the course of time. But I mean, they put things in place like a program to get to get an advanced degree that the company will pay for. Yes, it's a nice employee benefit, and I'm sure it helps attract people and whatnot, but it's also because we want you to be here, grow, develop, and we want your family to be better off than when you first started. And, that isn't something that every company does, obviously, but I think it's a good example of that exact feeling that it isn't just the employee that matters. It's lots of other folks that they're connected to. And I feel that responsibility. I think my uncle I mentioned and grandparents going back to them, they felt that responsibility that they need to do a good job every single day. And, it might require working 12 hours a day, or it requires a emergency trip somewhere to a different site or whatever. But, you hold that responsibility so dear because the lives you're impacting are so great and beyond just the people punching the clock every day for you. Yeah, it's been fun to watch that example, but I mean, it does come with that weight that's like, ooh, man, I've got to make good decisions. And, not that you're going to get it right all the time, but you certainly got to get it right more than you get it wrong, or you're going to have massive impacts on a lot of other people.
Yeah. Well, I love hearing about the education. I know you're proud of the company, the way you treat your employees. We didn't specifically talk about attrition, but I'm willing to bet some of the things you're proud of is that attrition maybe is a little bit lower than some other places.
Especially in this industry, it is
Yeah,
tough, and I think we're, at least who we can compare ourselves to, we're doing a pretty good job. So yes, I'm very proud of that.
awesome. Awesome. All right, we're getting close to time. I have two last questions for you.
Yeah.
The first is I'm always curious, um, any books or podcasts or things like that that you listen to or might suggest?
Absolutely. I'm a huge podcast guy. I really like Hidden Brain, Freakonomics. They've actually just did a series on cannabis for people that might not know much about the industry and all the craziness for it. I think it was 4 part back in like September, October. So anyway, a great one there. And even one of the ones I was actually listening to this morning was it's called Search Engine, and they take some of the wildest questions out there that basically I think the sort of idea is, what do you ask Google or a search engine that you aren't going to ask your friends or someone else because you might be embarrassed by it? There's just always some crazy things out there to learn, and that one's been really, really interesting too. So yeah, Hidden Brain, Freakonomics, Search Engine, those are a couple of the ones that are in my rotation right now.
Okay, cool. I'll check them out.
Yeah.
All right, so I always end with the same type of question, which is there anything we haven't spoken about yet that you'd like to?
You did a good job covering all of the main topics. I think I'll make a brief pitch for if you want to, learn more about us. Obviously, we've got a website out there. It's budmary.com. And but the reason I'd even pitch that out there is not just, come check us out or anything. It's because we actively like engaging with the people that are either in the industry, of course, people that have interacted with our products, people that are curious about what it is that we're doing or what the industry represents. And, we've got locations now and businesses in 4 states. It's not all of them, but it's always good to connect back and hear some of the stories from who we might have impacted, or, you've had one of our products and didn't like it. That is useful knowledge too. So I always like drawing people's attention to that just so that we can continue that, hopefully back and forth with a lot of the people that may or have interacted with our products and our brand and all the things we're trying to do in this space.
Cool. All right, well, we'll include links to the podcast, link to your website in the notes. Lucas, thank you. This was a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Darren. I really appreciate it.
All right, bye-bye.
See ya.